The preliminary hearing continues today in the case against UCLA chemistry professor Patrick Haran. Let's go back in time. You remember this accident in the laboratory at UCLA resulting in the death of his research assistant, Sherry Songji. The hearing will determine whether Haran should be tried for labor code violations which caused her death. The action of Songji herself also raised questions such as whether she showed reckless disregard for her own safety because she failed to wear a proper lab coat. Songji died 2 weeks after the accident, but in court on Friday, a doctor who treated her burns said he didn't think the injuries would turn out to be fatal.
I was surprised, quite surprised, that she ended up going through the course that she did. I had felt that while her burns were significant, the day she came in, I felt that she was going to make it out of the hospital alive.
All right, joining us is Sarah Azari. Sarah is a defense attorney representing Patrick Haran. And Robin Sachs is here as well. A lot of us have a vague memory of this terrible tragedy. A 23-year-old young woman with her full life ahead of us. She's about to be accepted into University of California, Berkeley Law School, etc. Died would seem like a horrible death. The side you're on here, explain where you are, how you fit into this.
Okay. Just to clarify, I don't represent Dr. Haran, but I have followed this case just because it's so fascinating. I'm a criminal defense attorney here in Los Angeles, and Dr. Haran's represented by Paul Hastings and Tom O'Brien, who's a partner at Paul Hastings.
So you're not part of this case at all?
I'm not part of the case. I'm a criminal defense attorney.
And you're observing the case?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You worked a little bit behind the scenes.
I consulted with on some of the discovery issues.
All right, so let me simplify it again. She's 23 years old. She's working with chemicals that are dangerous.
Correct.
And something happened. The vial broke. She had done this before. It got on her. She was set on fire. She wasn't wearing a protective lab coat. She was wearing something that would flame up immediately.
A polyester blend sweater.
Okay.
That was a big deal.
And part of the issue is, just so people understand, that the question is, was she prepared? In other words, was she taught the proper procedure or not? Dr. Haran says, yes, she was. The prosecution said, no, it was just a general statement. She never learned anything. She wasn't a trained chemist in any way. There was no way that she could have known everything because she wasn't put through the paces beforehand. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, you know, Steve, this is a woman who is not a rookie sophomore student at UCLA who's working as a tech in the lab. She has a degree. She's very well published. She was very well published.
She's 23 years old.
She was a graduate of, I believe,
Pomona, yes.
And she, you know, if you look at her resume, it's replete with words that none of us can pronounce. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can, Robin, and I can. And she was very well trained. She was actually an employee of this lab. So, you know, I don't think that Dr. Haran, I mean, I think that this is a horrible tragedy. These photos of her burns, absolutely gruesome. Robin and I watched it in court. But at the end of the day, while I think the DA's office is trying to find somebody to blame for this or find liable for this horrible tragedy, I don't think it's a crime. It's not a crime. It's an accident.
It's a tragedy.
Yeah. I saw these pictures, I have to tell you, and I forced myself to look at them. And that's my biggest question. Here you have, these are labor code violations. She's not being tried for murder. He's not being tried, excuse me, for murder or for involuntary manslaughter. But as the defense, you throw those pictures up of the most disgusting, despicable burns. How do you how do you hope that a jury is not going to want to hold him responsible for those?
I think that's the difficulty. Of course, the defense is going to want to exclude the photographs as being too prejudicial, you know, for the jury to see. But you know, I'm almost certain the DA would prevail in that sense and be able to show, at least to show the cause of death and the progression of the burns.
Doesn't it come down to, you say that she was well-schooled in this, and the argument is that she was not well-schooled in this, and that she only had maybe one generic talk-through. Even Professor Haran said it was kind of a general thing. not specific, that maybe she really didn't, nobody really told her you must wear a lab coat when you deal with these chemicals.
Well, my understanding is that she had experience with these specific chemicals. And actually when the fire department, the arson team arrived at UCLA right after the incident, she was coherent and she described specifically what she did in a way almost that, hey, I messed up. You know, I took the plunger out of the syringe and this stuff splashed on me and I ignited.
But,
I mean, she didn't even talk, even the investigating officer from the fire department, the first words that she says is, it was an accident. I pulled out the syringe too quickly and I knew that this chemical, when it interacts with air, would explode. So it's not even the lab coat.
But were occupational safety laws being violated by her not wearing a lab coat? And did she know that she had to wear a lab coat?
I think she did know she had to wear a lab coat. UCLA has specific guidelines for lab safety that were in place. I don't think Dr. Heron was in or around where this occurred. I think he was either out of the lab or in another part of the lab at the time of this incident. But
there's an interesting tidbit, though, that no one really knows about this case. And this is about this OSHA investigator. There's an OSHA investigator, correct me if I'm wrong, who was charged with murder, who is now the lead and one of the lead investigators on this case. How does someone charged with murder testify someone and hold someone responsible where there's a death involved?
Yeah, Robin, that's a good point. You know, it's Mr. Bodendistel, Brian Bodendistel, who's the investigator for Cal OSHA, and he's very lucky because he was convicted of murder prior to the change in the law in 2000, where he can actually go about the rest of his life as though this conviction never occurred. Of
course, he says, A, I didn't commit the murder. There was confusion. There were two other people involved that had to do with a drug dealer. He was 16 years old.
He's rehabilitated himself.
And the other side would say that was his past. What does that have to do with the quality of his information now?
Correct.
Yep.
That's something that the jury would consider, although at this point, you know, the DA's office has made a motion under seal, which is kind of rare for them to do. It's usually in gang cases or in situations involving juvenile records. And
a larger part of this is a beautiful 23-year-old, really bright, perhaps brilliant young woman who was schooled in science but was going to be a lawyer, accepted at Berkeley. You know how hard it is to do that. Her life is gone, and there's some sense of somebody wants payback. Somebody wants something to happen because of that, right?
Absolutely. But, you know, I think when you're dealing with filing criminal charges, and Robin's better suited to talk about this, the DA's office has to do, you know, pretty thorough evaluation with their evidences before they file charges. And sometimes things slip through the cracks and charges are filed.
How will it come out? How will it come out?
I'm sorry?
How will it come out?
You mean the outcome of the preliminary hearing?
Yes.
My guess is that probably Dr. Heron will be held to answer, and this case will go to trial.
Right, and I think that you'll end up at the very worst a misdemeanor. It's interesting that the family never filed a civil suit. This is a case where it's very hard for the prosecution to undo their filing. They're going to have to go forward, but it's really a tragic accident.
Sarah.
So it's
Thank you, Steve. Nice to meet you.